The Biden administration said don't expect much from the president's meeting with Russia's Vladimir Putin, and many say not much is exactly what the president got. White House officials point to successes, including a deal to bring back each country's ambassadors after they were brought home earlier this year. Mr. Biden says he told Putin that cyber attacks from hackers by Russia will not be tolerated. But critics say Putin got the upper hand by refusing to commit to stopping those attacks in the future. The president's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, was involved in this week's summit in Geneva. He joins us now from the White House. Jake, good morning. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
You say that the summits were unusually productive, but the president, as we pointed out, did not get concessions from Mr. Putin on the issue of cyber attacks and cyber security. So my question is, what is the U.S. prepared to do if these attacks continue?
Well, first, let me say that we didn't set the measure at some verbal commitment from Vladimir Putin that Russian criminals would stop hacking. We set the measure at whether, over the next 6 to 12 months, attacks against our critical infrastructure actually decline coming out of Russia. And we believe that we've set the basis for that. But of course, as the president said, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. So we will see over the course of the months to come whether this was, in fact, a productive session that the president spent with Vladimir Putin. On the question of consequences, the president was very direct with President Putin, and he was direct publicly. He said that we have significant capacity and that we're prepared to use it if these cyber attacks continue, because ultimately the President of the United States is going to defend the national interests of the United States, and he will do so vis-a-vis Russia if Russia does not get these attacks under control.
Are you talking about retaliation specifically?
Well, let me say something the president said in his press conference, which is this was not about threats or ultimatums. It was about a statement of reality. If these attacks continue, the president will have no choice but to take responsive measures against Russia, including in cyber. And he said that clearly and definitively to President Putin, and he said it publicly as well. He's mincing no words on what he's prepared to do as we go forward.
Jake, if you say including cyber, should we be stooping to using cyber attacks against Russia when we're asking them not to do it against us?
Look, what it comes down to here is that the United States will take every effort to stop criminals on our soil from conducting attacks on critical infrastructure elsewhere in the world, and we're asking other countries to do the same thing. But of course, if other countries continue to attack us in any way, then we reserve the right to use all means at our disposal to protect our people, to protect our gas pipelines, to protect our water systems. And this president is not going to take any tool off the table in response if it is ultimately going to advance and defend the interests of the United States.
Hey, Jake, it is a very difficult task trying to protect American infrastructure from cyber attacks, despite the best efforts. Given that, do you think it would help if Congress were to step in and set requirements for American companies to secure our infrastructure to prevent the inevitable?
Right now, what the Biden administration is doing is working closely with the private sector in key critical infrastructure areas to get them to accept and apply those standards now, voluntarily. Of course, if it turns out that that's insufficient, we should look to Congress to take additional steps. But the immediate need today is for the private sector across the board to step up its cybersecurity game. And just as we've minced no words with President Putin about what we expect of him, we've done the same with CEOs across the country.
So you're saying you're unsatisfied with the level of security of many of these companies?
Well, it is certainly the case that a number of companies in a number of areas of the American economy have not applied cutting-edge, state-of-the-art cybersecurity, and that they need to do so because the costs and consequences to the American consumer, to American working families, is grave if, in fact, they get attacked in ways that hurt the meat supply or raise the price of gas or make it harder for Americans to have safe drinking water. So, yes, we expect better as we go forward. And we in the federal government also need to step up our game, which President Biden instructed from the day that he took office.
Jake, the president spent a lot of time also talking about China with our allies, and he recently launched an investigation into whether the coronavirus came from a leak from the Wuhan lab. Why do we think an investigation will be fruitful when China's only going to show you what they want you to see? You know, I was a reporter there, and they keep a very close watch on you when you're in the country.
Well, there are two facets to this. One facet is the intelligence community analysis that President Biden asked our intelligence experts to undertake. That's a 90-day review where we are scrubbing everything we have in terms of our intelligence and where we're reaching out to allies and partners around the world. That will give us some more clarity. The second facet is what you're describing, which is ultimately we need access, and the international community needs access to China to be able to get that initial data that will tell us the most about where this virus came from and how it entered into the world. And you're right. So far, China has said, no, we won't allow that. But we just can't take the no lying down. We have to continue to raise the public pressure and do so in a concerted way with allies and partners. And that's why it was so important that at the G7, the world's democracies came together to insist on a phase 2 investigation in China of the origins of COVID-19.
Everyone wants those answers. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.